Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome to the third annual Iqra Book Festival for 2022. My name is Sajid Qayyum, and I'm here representing the ARC Glasgow, and I'm just introducing the next few minutes before we go on to our amazing programs being put together by the team here. Firstly, I'd like to say a great thank you for everyone who's put the festival together for the next 2 days. Firstly, for our sponsors, of Creative Scotland here in Scotland, and in partnership with Radio Ramadan and the ARC as well. And of course, the amazing team that's been working tirelessly for months and months on end. This kind of stuff doesn't happen just within a few days' notice. It's a lot of effort being put in by everybody here. So I join you and ask you to join together in your prayers for those who put this fantastic festival together. My name is Sajid Qayyum, one of the trustees of the ARC and Radio Ramadan in Glasgow, and I've been asked just to do a short introduction to the festival today. And I wanted to just very quickly bring you back, bring ourselves back to this organization that we have been privileged to be part of for the last 7 or 8 years, and in fact a bit longer than that if you've been involved with Radio Ramadan here in Glasgow. And we've had a number of values that we kind of try to stick to as part of the ARC. There's 8 values all together, including being accountable, being proactive, doing things of good quality, community development, sustainable, inclusive. But the 2 I wanted to focus on today was creative. Since we first broadcast in 1996, over 26 years ago, we were the first Scottish broadcaster catering for the minority ethnic community here in Scotland. And we've striven to remain creative in everything that we do, whether buying and converting the amazing building that serves as a permanent home for the media services the community needs, or indeed this very book festival itself. I'll come back to a little bit how I think that a book festival, although not in itself anything unique, this one I believe is very much so and very, very valuable. The second value is partnership. Iqra embodies that very sense of working with others to make something bigger and better by bringing in a wide variety of people, not including the amazing authors, some of whom are from a background of Islam and many others who are not, but also working with other partners. And I wanted to specifically mention a couple here, book club members, or book clubs that have become part of the festival. I'd like to say a very a welcome thank you to the Minority Woman English Language Conversation. That's the Minority Woman English Language Conversation WESREC group. And secondly, to the North Lanarkshire Muslim Women and Family Alliance group. And it's by working with partnerships, local community groups and partnerships like this, that the Iqra team have managed to put together a fantastic program for you for the next couple of days. And as I said to you before, coming back to the innovation side of it, the team here have put together an amazing number of offers that will be introduced to you over the next few hours and the next 2 days, in fact. They haven't just limited it to the theological aspect of the religion. As we've done for many years, whenever we talk about Muslim, we always think of the theology, we always think of the religion, the dogmatic aspects of the religion, but they've widened it out to a much wider sense of this wonderful religion that at the end of the day, this religion that actually inspires 2 billion people on this planet and around the world. And I think that's really, really important in terms of what Islam embodies, this way of life, not just the theological aspects, but the much wider sense of what it means to be part of this amazing way of life. And I hope today that you all who are listening are inspired by the amazing program that's been put together and the authors that will be coming on. Maybe next year, inshallah, God willing, we'll have the pleasure of meeting face to face, perhaps in the ARC itself. Let me not waste any more time. I'd like to introduce your main host for the day, my younger sister, as I call her, Sidra Ali. She's a biology and science teacher in secondary, and probably more significantly, anyway, I would say, a mum to Ismail, who is not just one, he's 1.5, I have to say. I have to make that very important. Those 6 months are very important. She's an avid reader herself and has followed the project from the grassroots and watched it grow over time. And she's been part of Radio Ramadan, like many of our youngsters from the age of 14, taking on various roles through the years and helping us get the radio station on the air, quite frankly, is a very valuable member of the team. So I'd like to pass the baton on to the much younger and better team. Sidra, take it from me, inshallah.
Jazakallah Sajid, younger for sure, but older and wiser definitely have their place as well. And I'm just introducing the Iqra Book Festival. I will be your host and I'll be with you the whole day, introducing the interviewees and the authors alike. And it's my pleasure, first of all, to introduce our first interviewee, Iqra Beg, who has a background in education like myself, and has interest in writing pertaining towards human experience and emotion. Now, for those of you who are joining us, remember you can join us live on our RR365 Facebook page and our YouTube channel as well. Over to you, Iqra.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Sidra. I'll be interviewing today Noreen Huq, and Noreen Huq writes plays, short stories, flash fiction and poetry. She featured on BBC Radio 4 Women's Hour, reading her short story Rearranged, which was published in an anthology in 2020. The anthology was A Match Made in Heaven at Hope Road Publishing. Her poem Spare Room appeared in issue 3 of Zero Readers, an American literacy magazine, who recently nominated her for the Best of the Net award. Noreen's debut novel Light Once Lost won a place in the One More Chapter competition and was shortlisted for the Cheshire Novel Prize in 2022. This was also the year she was selected for Playwrights Studio Scotland's mentorship programme. So I'm going to pass on to Noreen, who's going to read an excerpt of her short story, Rearranged.
Assalamu alaikum, Iqra. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Yeah, I'm going to start off from my short story, just a kind of a short extract from the beginning of it, and it's from the anthology A Match Made in Heaven, published by Hope Road. Okay. Sapna closed the front door and returned to the kitchen to resume her lunch. She opened her laptop and stared at the blank screen. She had wasted her life. She knew it. She had been married to Gazumfer for over 3 decades. It had been 30 years of bland indifference. Even on the day she accepted his proposal, she had suspected she would one day find herself telling the story of their engagement with a sigh. But her family wanted her to marry him, and that was the way things were. Not like now, when young people did as they pleased. She sighed and waited for her laptop to snap into life. She brought up the website, took a bite from her cheese and chaat masala sandwich, and typed in her login details. Username, 58 Jaffa Cakes. Password, the road not taken. And what had her parents based their decision on? Did they admire his wit? Were they impressed with his charisma or recognize the traits of a kind, caring, selfless nature? No, he had the right job, was the right colour, sported the appropriate amount of facial hair. She was stabbing at the keyboard and had to force herself to stop and breathe out her frustration. Well, now there was no one left to disapprove. She typed out the words, "Yes, let's meet," and clicked send.
Okay, so I love that you chose that part of the story to read out. As a South Asian woman, I feel that many of us have either experienced something similar in our lives, or at least know somebody that has. So I'm just very interested to know why you chose to read this part of the story.
Yeah, well, I thought it was quite a neat kind of way to summarize the difference between the generations, really, because how it used to be, you know, a lot stricter, and you couldn't really find your own marriage partner. You know, the older generation, that's what they went through, and then nowadays, what you know, what it is now, really. So I mean, still traditionally, families find, you know, marriage partners, and it's through the community, and that still can be the case, and it does tend to save people from the pitfalls of, you know, of that whole going online, and it's a safe space to find prospective partners. But I was really interested with this whole idea of like what happens. I mean, nowadays it's becoming the case that that link with the community is no longer there. Some people are more isolated. They don't have even those family connections that might introduce them to someone new. So what happens in that, you know, and like nowadays, the main character here, Sapna, is, now trying her luck online with a kind of marriage website with some really awful results later on in the story. And like you said, it's a kind of familiar thing, isn't it? You always know. I mean, I've heard so many stories from people, really kind of hilarious stories, quite horrific, some of them as well, about, you know, the experiences of going through this process, and, you know, all the shocking demands and disgusting table manners and tea flying out of noses, and the prospective guys, like, you know, munching on pakoras noisily while quizzing them about their cooking abilities. You know, all that. It's a whole topic in itself. I could probably just write one story just about that.
No,
yeah, I wanted to kind of tease out those different ideas. Yeah.
No, definitely. I think one thing, if anyone's read the short story, which you obviously should, there's so many themes in it that are so relatable. And there was one sentence, and luckily it was in your excerpt as well, that I really wanted to focus on a little bit, or have you expand maybe. It was the one where Sapna says, well, now there was no one left to disapprove. So it's almost as though the sense I got from it was like she felt like she could now live her life as past. So it was almost as if she was in limbo, maybe. But I'd love to hear, you know, what it was about that, why that sentence, why that phrase.
Yeah, because I mean, again, it shows that the difference between the generations. I mean, see, when, you know, the first generation of Pakistanis came to this country, right? It was, their natural focus was on, you know, they were economic migrants. It was about making a better life for their children. And because of that pressure, they didn't really have the kind of freedoms that we do to just focus on what they wanted. It was all about sacrifice and hard work. So yeah, I thought, yeah, it would be interesting then to follow the story of an older woman who was from that kind of background, from that life, who was then free from those constraints. Like, what happens then? What is she? I found it quite exciting, that journey of like, what is she now going to do now she's got that freedom? And that's the kind of impetus of the story that really made me want to go, oh, I want to follow this character and see what it is that she's kind of, what she decides or how she goes about, you know, making changes in her life, really.
Yeah, so that kind of falls on to the next question, which was how your personal experiences kind of informed your writing process, because the story that you've written is there's so many topics that have been explored within the South Asian community, and the taboos and things that we kind of have to deal with, but this is a very niche topic that you've picked. You know, it's like, you know, you get married and it's this idea, it's happily ever after, that's it, full stop, done. But what actually happens afterwards? And, you know, in Sapna's case, her husband's passed away. So then what? Now what? You know, his life stopped. But interestingly enough, it doesn't seem like it has for Sapna. So, yeah, your own experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really based on any one specific experience. It's mainly on the kind of observations of things that, you know, of Pakistani culture, of people around me, of the way things are. And yeah, so it's interesting because in the story, she's come out of a long marriage, whereas obviously her husband's passed away, but she's got this feeling of guilt because she realizes, hold on, I was actually never really happy. You know, she's got time now to reflect over the years, and like the way that she just kind of went with everything. And it was like, yeah, I never really asserted myself as a person, and that's something that's quite, that can, you know, that did happen a lot in the past and still does, unfortunately. But yeah, so it was that idea of I wanted to explore as well this idea of what is happiness really, like, you know, what gives you that happiness. And yeah, the main character in the story is, you know, she's materially very wealthy, right? It's that old cliche that money doesn't make
bathrooms, very wealthy.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, she's but yet she is really emotionally impoverished, right? So I suppose the story for me was kind of about this kind of rejection of materialism over, you know, the value of experience. So, you know, she's got the money, the big house, but yeah, she's not really living the way she wants to live her life. So it's kind of like an emotional rags to riches story, you know, and she's kind of, yeah, she's not got that happiness in her life until she then goes, I'm going to decide now to take action and change it. And that's, you know, what happens.
I think that's really interesting. Her taking action was her signing up to join a dating website. Now, I don't know about everyone watching, but for me, I was like, whoa, like you're an older woman, you've been married, you're now widowed, and, you know, I think even for the younger generation, some people can find it very difficult to you know, join dating websites because they're scared of this or that, or just, you know, so many obstacles in the way. But for an older woman to do that, I think it's crazy, but it was so refreshing. I think it's the first time I've ever like read something similar, like anything like that actually. But it was interesting watching her thought process as well, because she's joined this account, this website, and she's justifying all her choices. And she's like, you know what, well, it's not like I'm actually going to get married anyway. Like, look at my age, I'm not going to get married, I'll just try it or whatever. So although a lot of South Asians might be able to relate to this, I was wondering if you'd be able to explain this to people, to non-South Asians, to explain this concept and maybe why it's so shocking and so like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to be really that annoying pedantic person now. And it's not actually a dating website, it's actually a marriage website. But
a marriage, right? Yes, there's a difference there.
There is a difference.
But yes, okay, thank you for correcting me there.
I just don't want to get in trouble.
No,
no, but yeah. So again, but then, like, you know, the joke is that essentially it is almost the same, but really, you know, halalified. You know, it's like when you don't, you know, like it's the whole idea is it's for marriage, right? And that's why people are looking. But essentially, when you look at it, isn't it just people meeting up outside in a way that is away from family? Now, I think a lot of the time, this is the thing I was really intrigued by, because in modern day society, we are coming away from community culture. It is all about the individual, and it's all like, and so people don't really can be living lives that are quite isolated, that they maybe even don't identify a lot of their kind of the way they live their life with kind of Pakistani culture as much. And you see that through the generations diluting, you know, even like language, right? The way that people are they don't have as much Urdu as maybe the other generations that came before. So yeah, and I think so to explain that, I suppose, it's quite hard, really. It's a bit baffling. I think I'd explain it with quite kind of a bit of difficulty there, because I don't understand the fact that, you know, I think with older generations, that how strict their lives were, and it's completely separate from religion. You know, it's the culture prescribes certain things that were way beyond what Islam prescribes. So for example, getting divorced was like, you know, such a rare thing. Not heard. I mean, if people were going to get divorced of that generation, they would just separate. So that was a huge thing for them to do. And so, like I said at the start, they didn't have those freedoms that we do. Everything was such a big deal. The level of judgment that existed then and still exists. There's still you still get a stigma related to these things, or like, you know, marrying at an older age after bereavement or whatever. So that even, you know, they couldn't find their own partner. Like, how, you know, when you think about that now, right, you're like, whoa, oh, you met once and then you got married. Oh, okay. Like,
worked it for you.
And you can, you know, figure it out. So it was just a completely different world, wasn't it? But also, I think that even people who are not from Pakistani cultures will understand a little, you know, to a certain extent, because it's a lot. It's you know, what really pins this idea down is ageism and also sexism, because it tends to be that judgment is on women more often than not, sadly. And that's those concepts are universal, you know. That women are looked at as when you get beyond a certain age, you're past it. You don't have that value anymore, and that is sadly a universal concept. So, it's not just within our culture; these things are kind of pervasive in society.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that. A very good answer. One thing I kind of want to hold into is your the individualism. Not speak English. Individualism aspect of, I think, the generation now, where we are moving away from the collectivism, the, you know, everyone's together in the community kind of vibe. But what's interesting to me is that Sapna's personality in the story, it's almost like she's in conflict with two parts of herself. There's one part that's, you know, a strong widow, she's living on her own, and she's refusing to have her sister-in-law move in because her sister-in-law is, you know, she's very suggestive. She's like, we'll live together and we'll be great. But she's very much like, no, like, I live on my own and I'm okay with it. But also, and she has the courage to kind of explore herself, hence why she's on the marriage website. get that distinction. And yet she still seems quite terrified of being judged, and, you know, maybe even shunned for her modern thinking. So I think with Sapna's character, what is it that you were trying to portray or achieve with this duality?
So really that conflict within her, and I think that's quite normal. I mean, everyone has that within them. They're like, they've got certain, you know, they want to be braver in certain situations, or, you know, that way you think you do something or you say something or you meet some sort of problem in life, and later on you think, oh God, why didn't I say that, or why didn't I do that? And it's that little voice in your head trying to kind of, I don't know, kind of get you to go out there and feel a little bit uncomfortable and be out your comfort zone. And so you're right, she has that within her, but also it's I think it really kind of, because obviously she's still got her sister-in-law, she's got, you know, a member of her husband's family who's kind of still close to her in a way. So I think that it's the idea of moving on, isn't it? The guilt in that. And I think women are especially skilled at guilt. We take guilt to another level,
a whole other level, definitely,
you know, and we really kind of inflict it on ourselves. So yeah, it's that idea of, you know, how can I move on from this, and then it's this idea of selfishness as well, because I wanted to explore that again. That's such a intergenerational thing. Like my own parents, right, when we finally convinced them to go out to eat, I can see them sitting there in a restaurant completely uncomfortable, and when the bill comes in, you're just like, the stress levels are like, we spend so much money on ourselves, it's such a waste. And even like convincing them to buy new things, so you're like, you know, you know, put yourself first for once, and they're just not used to doing that. And it's just, you know, it's funny, they've lived their life in a way that's so it's actually amazing when you look at it, that level of self-sacrifice,
absolutely,
and what they've put themselves through, you know, for the sake of their kids and everything. And you're like, wow. And you think, God, I couldn't do that.
I know, absolutely.
So again, I think it's like getting that balance, isn't it? Like, you know, and I think Sapna herself represents that idea of the person who's never put herself first, and then is trying to make that change. And I suppose it's the guilt of doing that.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to watch her do it, because even though, again, she's guilty and she feels all those ways, one thing you said there was that we put it up, it's almost like we inflict it upon ourselves. And there's like a level of self-awareness in Sapna, that she's aware that she's lived her life in a way that she no longer wants to live. Like, she doesn't want to be in that bubble anymore, she wants to do something different. And that level of self-awareness is really interesting, because like we're saying, South Asian females, Pakistani females, can sometimes be very selfless. You know, they're expected to be very selfless, and so it's just interesting to watch her develop and reflect on herself. So I think what I'm trying to get at is that, although she was like, what made you want to talk about this woman that's going through all these things, but also is very much self-aware? She sees what she's doing, she sees the patterns now, and she wants to break them. What's the aim to show, like, you know, showcase a woman like this, a character like this?
Well, I think it's to show again that balance of what you need in life. You can't be completely like one way or you can't be completely selfish either. It's that it's kind of bridging that gap between the generations, and I think our positive points and our negative points, you know, and also to show that these women are individuals and they're unique, and they have a sense of humor, and they have an emotional life. And I always find that really, I think I was quite naive when I first wrote the story, and I thought it would, you know, the way it would be received. So what I mean by that is I think when I got asked to go on to Radio 4 to speak about the story, that was such an eye-opener for me, because I remember you know, when I was being interviewed about it, Jane Garvey was saying, I was really shocked, I was really surprised that this character is like this or is like that, and there's like kind of humor in it. And then there was an awkward pause, and it was almost like, and then she realized, but I shouldn't be surprised, should I? And I was like, no, you shouldn't. I mean, okay, we're brown women, we're Pakistani women, we may cover our heads, but we still have an IQ, we still have a personality. And to
Absolutely.
And it's the fact that that actually had to be spelled out was slightly painful to me. And I just thought, oh God, it was so depressing at that point. I thought, oh my God, really? Are we still here?
I think, sorry, please.
Yeah, I'm just saying that there's, you know, I've got so many kind of aunties in the community that are such huge characters, and they're such wonderful fun, and they have their own, you know, it's just like the amazing kind of people. And that's at the end of the day, we're all people. And yet it's the way that judgments are made about, well, you're a brown woman, you cover your hair, oh, you poor soul. You know, it's it's so reductive, and the kind of inherent discrimination within those judgments, it just comes out when you start to talk about them, and you kind of challenge that stereotype, isn't it?
No, definitely. And it's interesting because I think we feel the same within the community as well. So this is not just outside, like, although it may not be, oh, you cover your scarf, you're a poor soul, cover your scarf, good English and stuff, cover your hair, and, you know, poor soul, that type of thing. It's more so like you're an older woman and, oh, look, your life is over now, your husband's gone. And we have certain stereotypes and certain judgments towards these older people, older women. And I'm not going to lie, when I read the story, I was like, wow, this is crazy. I was like, this woman, I'm loving her, but I'm very surprised at what she's doing. And it was really interesting because I then had to really think about it and think about an adult, like an older female that I know, and I had to like kind of imagine, just to make it relatable, just to see how I felt, to see if I could sit with that, and how did it make me feel uncomfortable? What was I like? What? Whoa. And I think naturally you do, but that's why we have these conversations to death, don't we? Like, about our culture and our society and men and women and this and that. But the reason it's so important is so that we have people like yourself that, like, you know, lovely stories like this that cultivate discussion. Because some things one thing that you said was that people don't talk about it, so they might be in the back of their head somewhere, but it never comes to the conscious. And by writing and doing that, that's what you've done. You've brought it to their conscious mind. They're aware of it. So that was really interesting, and also leads on to the next question. So you obviously spoke about, so I just want to know the response that you've gotten from your family and friends. You obviously mentioned the interview you were at, but from family and friends who read it, what was their response? How did they take it?
So I think the funny thing is, right, honestly, apart from my sister and my husband, I don't think anyone else has actually read the story. And the reason I think what happened was that, see, at the time, so it was 2020 when the anthology was published, and things were really hectic at that point. So I came to writing like much later in life. You know, I wasn't starting, like, you know, I didn't really go for it right, you know, when I really wanted to, sadly, in childhood. I loved writing, but I did come to it later. And because of that, I felt, well, I need to give it my all and really go for it. And any kind of opportunity is going to come my way. That was the point. I thought, I'm going to say yes to everything and try and do everything, right? Which was kind of insane. But what happened because of that was just things were coming at me really quick and fast. You know, I was constantly working on different things. I was furiously writing poetry, short stories, sending things off to this competition, that competition. And at that point, I think everyone was really supportive, but they couldn't really keep up. And I think I was overwhelmed at that point. So I think the reaction, even now, that I get when I say to them, like, oh, I'm writing this, or I'm working on that project, they're like, which one is this again? What are you doing? Like, it's that level of, like, I don't know what noise,
okay, sure.
but we don't quite know.
So happy for you.
Yeah. So it's kind of a case of that. But it's, and also, see, at that time, I think they knew I was writing, but they thought, oh, it's like a hobby. I don't think they realized how much it had taken over my life. So I remember just before the story came out, I was I'd written a bit of a play, and it was being performed at Glasgow Women's Library at a kind of celebration event, and it was just like a really amazing experience. They had professional actors reading it, scripts, and my mum came along to that, and I'll never forget her reaction. Was just amazing, because, like, I was watching her kind of watching it, and just the look on her face, right? And as the audience was reacting, like laughing to the jokes and stuff, and you know, there's like a really special atmosphere that gets built up, you know, when you've got an audience there listening live to words that you've written. It's just really quite intense. And so that, you know, she was just taking all that, and at the end she just turned to me and she kind of had tears in her eyes and she was looking at me with a shocked face. She's like, I knew you were writing, Noreen, but I didn't think it was anything like this. And I think for me personally, that was just such an amazing moment. But also, I think it wonderfully sums up what writing is like, you know, a writer's life, because you're sitting there and you're on your own in your room working, writing away for ages on your own, and then at some point, you know, something that you've written kind of goes a bit public, and it's that amazing but terrifying kind of vulnerable feeling of, oh God, right? What's the reaction? How are people gonna, where's it gonna land? How's it gonna land after so long of working on it on your own? And so that was, it's quite intense but wonderful. Anyway, so yeah, everyone's really supportive about Alhamdulillah. I have had a lot of support with the novel I'm writing, and my brother and my sister-in-law have already read it, and they're like, okay, next, book 2, please. What's next on it? Like, well, I've not written it yet. And they're like, so that's really nice. Yeah, and my husband's really fantastically supportive. He just does so much so that I can do the writing. And yeah, and he puts up with me being really boring about it, really, to be honest. Like constantly talk, oh, all right, I'm doing this, and this is what this is about. And he's like, right. So yeah.
No, that's really nice. It's always nice to hear people being supportive of your work. We have just a few more minutes left, so I have 2 things I want to do. One is, you said you are writing a novel. You finished?
Yes. Yep. So I started in 2020. Yes, and finished earlier the year.
Sorry, I froze and I thought it was me, but it just.
Oh, right.
Please continue.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it got shortlisted for a competition, the Cheshire Novel Prize. So, and yeah, and that was just such a phenomenal experience. Like, so much came out of that, and I've met so many different amazing kind of writers. So I'm kind of connected to kind of I'm still in contact with the shortlisters there, and they're amazing. They're just such wonderful writers and such an amazing support, really good friends. So it's, yeah, I think every experience I've had throughout, ever since I kind of did a course at Glasgow Women's Library, which is fabulous as well. If you've never been, go to school there.
Yes, definitely.
It's an amazing place. But ever since I went there, and just every single experience since has just put me in contact with amazing people, and really helped me develop as a writer, and develop my confidence as well through each stage. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, thank you so much for this interview. We do have one question. Okay, great. From the audience, and it is, do you think because women have become more independent, it's hard to find a partner? Oh, that's quite, there's a lot in there, right? You have 2 minutes, so on you go. Okay. Oh, 2 minutes, okay. Right, well, there's maybe yes and no. It depends on what's expected, really. Like, you know, I think you know, nowadays marriage is seen to be more of a partnership, which is a kind of a very positive way. Like, you know, you're kind of partners in the house and out and working, right? There are still people who are of the mindset that, no, I want my wife to be in the house. There are still people who have that traditional mindset, and you know, and I suppose as someone who is more independent, who is working, they might not be the best option for them. But it's about finding that balance, isn't it? And who, you know, and who you connect with. And I think really importantly is knowing yourself, first of all. And I think that's the kind of key message in the story, is that you can't be happy in any relationship unless you have self-knowledge. And it's that journey to that, which is so valuable. So yeah, I think if you're independent, you can still find a partner. You just need to find the right person, and to do that, to know who you are and what you want in life. I think that's a great answer. No, I think that's I personally think that's a great answer. Self-awareness, I think, is the first step for anything. But thank you so much for allowing me to interview today. Your short story is amazing. The more I read it, the more things I was like, this is so interesting, this is so fascinating. So if you haven't read it, please do go and read Noreen Huq's Rearranged. It's in the anthology A Match Made in Heaven. But I think I'm going to pass to Sidra now. She's here and waiting. So thank you so much.
Thank you.